Rep Radio, an Emory production. Since 2009, our goal has been simple. We support, promote, engage, and inspire the arts community by igniting the ghost light that shines on the stages of the up-and-coming, the unsung heroes, the brilliant writers, and the dynamic designers. Our podcast breaks the fourth wall to give you an inside look at the plays and the players. Stay tuned. Rep Radio is on the air. On today's podcast, I head over to Plays and Players Theater to talk with 1812 Productions about the new play, The God Project, where two pastors' kids find unexpected common ground at a Swedish furniture store. Writers and performers Sean Close and Jenn Childs talk about similarities growing up in this God couple of a play featuring Joilet Harris. Here's my conversation with Sean Close and Jenn Childs. Welcome to Rep Radio. I am your host, Darnell Radford, and this is the first episode of the 10th season of Rep Radio, now an Emory production. I'm super excited to be here at Plays and Players Theater with 1812 Productions to talk about The God Project, written and performed by Sean Close and Jenn Childs, who are right here in front of me, along with Joilet Harris, yes. Part of the production as well. Sean, Jenn, welcome back to Rep Radio.
Hello, thanks for having us back.
Thank you. Love coming here and chatting with 1812. It's always a fun time.
In the Plays and Players basement.
Yes. So I guess earlier in the season, Tyler hinted that something was coming down the pike, so I kept it under wraps. But we're here to talk about it, and this is just after Easter Sunday, and kind of a good time to be sort of focused, I guess. So let's get into it. Tell me about the God Project.
You want to start?
You could start. Yeah. I'll add color, you know.
Great. Let's see, timing-wise, I guess a couple of years ago, well, Sean and I are both pastors' kids, and we have done This Is the Week That Is together for 4 years?
Since 2015.
Yeah, since 2015. And finding out that we were both pastors' kids, that we shared some of the same questions, sharing also some of the same reading material at a certain time, it just became a topic of conversation between us. And in the meantime, I had also been having some conversations with David Bradley, who's the director. We would meet to talk about plays that we might want to do, and we would end up not talking about plays, but talking about religion. Christopher Colucci, who is the composer and sound designer, is a longtime friend and is also somebody who has, a master's in philosophy and a minor in theology. And so I just found myself all of a sudden running in circles with people that I wanted to talk about God with. And so I guess about 2 years ago, we just got in the room together, and we really just, that first time, all we did was talk.
We just talked and shared stories, and it was great.
Yes.
You could call it a workshop, but it really was just talking and hanging out and just sharing like how we came up in and around church and spirituality, and what we think of God, or how to talk about God now, and how God or religion is talked about now, and there was certainly no writing done early on. It was just talking and just kind of exploring But I remember so vividly the feeling after that first workshop of catharsis and of a sort of a reflection. We all like reflected back to each other something and kind of offered a sort of space where we all, I don't know, it was a space that I don't have other than conversations with my partner, you know, like, and my sort of contemplation and, you know, reading certain specific writers. So just, it felt sort of special. And then we just followed that, started writing, started writing things that were sort of kind of just whatever. And then we kind of cobbled a story together and then started writing for that story.
We the first David Bradley gave us some like experiments to write. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that is written that never saw the light of day, but just allowed us to kind of explore these character voices. And we decided to set it in a Swedish furniture store. We never call it IKEA, but it is Schmikea to us.
Hey, if they want to drop a sponsorship on it.
That's what other people have said that recently where I'm like, sponsorship. We just were so worried about being sued.
Yeah, IKEA, where the divine lives. One of the reasons to set it in IKEA was the collision of the sacred and the mundane, and having a place where both things exist equally. And in some ways, it's just like an odd couple story. You know, it's two coworkers that are, while they share a similar background, have become very different people. So even if you are not a religious person or don't sit and contemplate the meaning of the universe, there's fun to be had in the story, I think, regardless.
So what was it like to be pastor's children? My only experience, that would be somewhat understandable about a pastor's child, is I was friends with the pastor's child. But, our friendship was in and around the church and really didn't expand too much outside of that. So what was it like to be pastor's children?
As soon as we were born into, was your
My dad was a pastor when I was born.
Okay,
We had a parish.
Right. My dad had a parish too, and there's like, you live a very public life, and and everyone knows your business for better and for worse. I remember feelings, and for better or for worse, feeling sort of special, and some of that, maybe it was unhealthy ego things when I was a teen, and I was like, yeah, I am special. But so as a kid, your business is in the sermon. Sometimes, in that sort of very public way, you're also just tied to a very unconventional vocation. It's like being a pastor is just such a strange, unconventional vocation that felt so normal to me.
Yeah, same.
And special and unique at the same time. I have noticed that there are a lot of preachers' kids in the theater, and I've always thought that just made a whole lot of sense, because there's just so much about doing theater and worshiping whatever way that you worship, that the crossover ritual, pageantry, spectacle, the sort of order of events, the role of song, the role of storytelling. They're just so
call and response with an audience. It's a very there's a lot of parallels there, and I think too there's something about in the same world of living that very public life. There was also something about expectations. You said to somebody, "I'm a pastor's daughter." You got one of two responses. It was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I better not curse," or "Oh, all right." You went, like you must be either a bad girl or you were a super good girl. And there was a set of expectations that you would behave in a certain way. And I remember when I was a teenager, we were going to a church. My dad was a professor at the time at a seminary. He worked at a seminary, so he didn't have his own parish. So the church that we went, their teenage daughter, who was a year older than I had, decided she wasn't going to get confirmed, and it was scandalous.
Yeah.
It was, everybody in the church was like, Lisa Cope is not getting confirmed. What a big middle finger to her father. This is just like, and that's really the only, I'm sure there's other places that have that kind of expectation, but you are at the head of this. It's like you're the first family of that church, you know? Yeah. And so you screw up, everybody knows about it, and your father preaches about it. And it becomes a lesson.
That sense of community that revolves around the church, too, generates all those things that are outside and in society as well. So there's gossip, there's all this like
those
good
things.
and bad and all those things there too. I remember Ardent Theater Company produced a show called Equivocation, and there's a line in there that says something about we now walk into the theater as if it were a church, and we're expecting to get these messages as if they've come from God. So like I'm doing a terrible job.
That's right.
Paraphrasing this.
You don't have equivocation memorized?
No, it was so dense. So, But I remembered hearing that and hearing the audience go, There's probably like Kathy Simpson with the audience. But I do remember that and thinking like, wow, I feel like this is why we're so, I don't know if hard on theater is the word, that we're really imparting so much on a theatrical experience that we really want to be able to walk out of the theater and take something with us that is life-changing. So whenever there is an experience on stage that is indeed life-changing, or at least makes you feel in a way, then we go out and we have to tell everybody, oh my God, you have to see this. It's life-changing. Like, you know, I only read the description in the press release, and I can already tell you it's going to be life-changing, and you're going to be moved forever.
Right, yeah, that's I have those parameters for theater for sure, those expectations, just because I know how, like, ground shifting, foundation shifting it is to me when I encounter a profound piece of theater, and you know, clearly obsessed with doing theater. If devoted my life to it thus far, you know, and I think that's true, and maybe that's, and the more I've worked on God Project with Jenn and this whole crew, I've been like, oh man, I'm just so like one-to-one seamlessly looking for my church, and the sort of like in you put it very well, where I'm like, this is how I'm trying to look at the miracle somehow. I'm trying to. Sometimes it's like as overt as like seeing the Christians. Like, have you seen the Christians? Yeah.
And now, and as we speak now, Bristol is preparing the Christians for stage now.
Yeah, the production at the Woma just destroyed me, just rocked me, and I. So much so that I like called my dad afterwards, and I was like, "There's only one more, and I know it's on a Sunday, but you gotta go." And I was just like acting out of this sort of like ecstatic feeling that I got, which is just such a religious experience. And that was a very overt example where I was just acting out of all my preacher's kidness.
But it's so funny when that happens, and I know for me, like really diving into theater came around the same time that I was kind of like, I don't think I'm really religious. I don't think this religion thing is for me. I'm just going to do theater, which has nothing to do with religion. It's just about sitting with a whole group of people and hearing stories that we've told again and again and again, and doing them in new ways so that we can all find something and we all feel better about, you know, like all of the things that church,
because we are continuously reinventing the message.
Yes, that's right.
You know, making it fit into what we're currently trying to unpack in society. So, being pastor's children, I would assume that you had glanced through the Bible. Or had you? I mean, did you? Was it requirement to have read the Bible cover to cover? Or do you have the same sort of knowledge that everybody else at least claims to have?
You have better knowledge of it than I do.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we never read cover to cover. I mean, we certainly studied the Bible and read the Bible. And... but it was not like I'm not one of those people who can quote you chapter and verse and go, Luke 4:17 and Jesus,
that's why no shellfish.
That's right, exactly. That's right. No, and I find the Bible heartbreaking in places, frustrating in places, and mystifying to me in terms of like how people have interpreted it.
Yeah.
I'm sort of like, I read some of these stories because I go like, okay, here's the story that you read if you want to know why you should not, masturbate. And I read it and I'm like, that's the lesson of that story. Like so much stuff happens.
Like,
so
they took so much time to focus on that.
I know. But yeah, and then there's just, I don't know. I remember one year, when Lily was little, my daughter, we read aloud during Lent, Mark's Gospel, and just as a story. And when it got to the end, she was just devastated. She was just wrecked. It's like, no, that can't happen to him. That didn't, and so those, believe it or not, those stories have potency, and in a similar way that Othello does, or, Hamlet, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So.
Do you remember anything about like Sunday school? And that overall experience?
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, I went to an African Methodist Episcopal AME church.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember like there was a couple of things we looked forward to. Food. It was mostly food. They said something about fellowship, which means we're going downstairs to eat.
But food comes first. They said food and fellowship.
But I just remember the congregation would just lose itself whenever the kids prayed. Because they would, they'd give us the mic and we'd go down the line and thank God for all these things. And there would just be people that were just, for current terms, got their life off of what you were saying, basically. You're like, I thank you for waking me up this morning, starting me on my way. Yes, oh, my Lord. A bunch of things like that. And I just remembered later on going to an evangelistic church that was pretty much a concert.
Yeah.
For 4 hours.
Wow.
And it's like, are you done yet? Because we haven't brought the mass choir up yet.
Yeah.
Oh no! And I'm in the mass choir. Getting through all of that. So it was like the music part of it is really what I take away from it the most. Yeah. And think about how not really having, I guess it became this foundation, kind of like the writing that you did as exercises, and now that you have that foundation, you can sort of walk through. And I guess for me, it just felt like that foundation allowed me to walk through life and say, okay, I got to be good. In general, we come up with something very general about what we should do, like be nice and not be rude and so on. I just think it's so interesting to think about how people feel about religion now, because of many messengers out there continuously sort of gone against the messages they were responsible for delivering, and then it makes you question like why, how much of this can we believe if it was. If you didn't believe it yourself, or did you, and didn't properly explain to us that it's a struggle for you as well? Because maybe if we heard that more, I think there would be more people that are still kind of holding on to those values that they grew up with.
And I think that's an interesting thing too about the show is that it's very much the God project and not the church project, because I feel like. Just speaking personally, my relationship with God is very different than my relationship with church. Yeah. And my relationship with church has changed radically over the years. And, because it's become political and because it, and so much so much hatefulness is done in the name of God by people who are church people, and that I don't, it's not like it's easier to unpack my relationship with God, but my relationship with God, I feel like that's a very different thing than my relationship with church. That's all.
It's funny, and even just working on this, I'm saying the word God so much more, and I think because I've been so wary of using the word God because it for one didn't feel like my word for it feels like when you say God you also are bringing the baggage of the people that wield God and religion like a weapon, and to discriminate and put down other people and to tell people that they're not worthy of love, and so that's all there, and just using the word God. So it and we also had a joke in our sort of workshops and writing where we would just be like, so when we're talking about God or whatever, we couldn't even say it straight, but
we had to put quotes around it, or be all
or
weird.
we had to be all weird about it, and it was just an interesting thing to notice. And it was what is that? It's the carrying around the baggage. It's also the and there's something very earnest and kind of vulnerable making about just calling this play the God Project, for me at least, because I am so much more apt to be well, my God is the universe, my God is connection, my God is everything.
I feel like there's many more people that will say that they are more spiritual than they are religious. Can you find something holy or godly in IKEA?
I think you can find something holy and godly everywhere. I think that's in some ways that's the point of the play, is that there's a lot of looking outside yourself for God, and outside and above other people, and it's less about the God out there, and this play is a little bit more about the God in here, between us, you, in me, and in IKEA.
Well, I was thinking as I was trying to think about what kind of conversation would I have, and I'm like, this is basic. It's 1812. It's a comedy. It's a workplace comedy. And then I was thinking about my experience in IKEA and how it is kind of like this escape, and I do have a spiritual connection to the showroom. It's walking through it, you're just first of all, there are these quintessential conversations that every couple has in an IKEA.
Or make or
and
break.
It's just did you get the script on the way in? You guys are just off book. You're on top of this thing. Geez. It's see, honey, this is the one we were talking about. Remember the one in the kitchen? You never listen to me. I was talking about this. These are the ones.
It's those Swedish words are spells to cast on couples. I'm now upset about something.
And if you bought it 5 years ago when it had a different name, and now it changes,
it's too much.
Those bed slats are not going to fit anymore.
Those boxy bookshelves that everyone has, they've changed names several times, so you're just okay.
Well, and that is it too, is the sense of and why IKEA made sense as a setting is also a whole bunch of instructions that you sometimes can't understand. You get lost in names, and, you have to figure it out for yourself.
There's a roadmap that feels sort of convoluted to some and might be more straightforward to others.
And it's also very vague. It's this picture. It should look like this by step 8.
Okay, great.
There's no... okay. Mine doesn't look like that.
That's right.
So...
Yeah.
And I think that exactly what you said is also a big part of what this is. Mine doesn't look like that. My version of spirituality, my version of God, my version of whatever you want to call it, not only may not look like yours, but it doesn't look like what I expected it to look like. And I think circling back around to being a pastor's kid, one of the things that is in this play is that, for better or for worse, and I don't know whether it is put on us or it was just that's how I took everything. There was an expectation that well, this is what it's going to look like.
This is the way to do it.
This is the way to do it. This is
Yeah.
what a blessed life looks like. This is what a purpose-driven life looks like. This is what a mission-driven life looks like. And that is, and it doesn't always look like what you think it does.
It's funny, and just hearing you say that, I'm like thinking back to teenage Sean, who was like, yeah, that's not how my life's gonna look, but it's like, maybe, again, that's very like me-centric, very, you know, my own ego-driven,
Yeah.
but like, that model, like, it's a way.
Yeah,
And,
that's right.
and I'm struck by the ways where I'm like, no, Dad, I'm not like you, because I'm not a priest, but also like I'm leading an unconventional life in an unconventional career where I like telling stories too, and I like people looking at me. Not all the time.
And I wear a dress sometimes.
And I wear a dress sometimes, and that's sort of a dress. It's a robe.
You like to command the congregation
Yes.
when the house is full.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I was, what was I going to say? There's many times where I wish like our future selves could go back in time and sort of tell us this is a blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you incorporate some of these, there's an interesting future ahead of you.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you have to read this word for word and take it with you. But you don't know ahead of time, and you're not really encouraged to actually take this as just here's some foundational information. It's kind of like it's like I'd really like to sell you this Amway, but you know, when you really just want them to leave you the brochure so you can think on it later, you're just like, nah, I really need you to buy this right now. And I guess you know, when you think about education in general, like even when we talk about sort of like drug awareness, it was sort of forced on us to say all of that is absolutely bad. There isn't an element of this that could be beneficial for anybody in any way. Mm-hmm. And then you get further along in life and you're like, well, that wasn't really true either. It's like, this person here is, you know, really helped by some elements of these things. And there are elements of this quote-unquote bad thing incorporated into a lot of good things that actually, you know, why didn't they explain any of this?
Yeah.
They could have just said it's complicated.
Yeah.
And you have to tread lightly. And you're like, oh, okay, tread lightly. So if I don't have a full idea of what I'm going to get out of this, then maybe I should just tread lightly. Yeah. Ask more questions and seek out differences of opinion to figure it out. So, you know, kind of the same with religion. It's like, we should shop around, and maybe instead of the message here in this church might be a little different than the message down the street.
That's
and,
right.
You know, and so on. So how do you incorporate the humor that is expected from 1812 in a production like this?
We'll see. I don't know.
It seemed funny.
I mean, you're not poking. Are you poking fun at religion, or just everything around these characters' lives is creating this sort of humor while they are sort of unpacking and discovering?
Yeah.
You know,
I think it is a lot of it has to do with our location. There's a great amount of fun to be had with IKEA, and as I said, it's also it's an odd couple story, you know, and I think we should be very clear. We're not making fun of religion at all. If anything, it's our way of unpacking it and asking some big questions with snappy dialogue.
Yeah. The repartee. Well, but really, and it is, you know, there's comedy in these people just really trying their best.
Yeah.
And really not knowing what the answer is and not knowing what to do. I find that both very human and very funny.
Yeah. So 1812's God couple is called the God Project.
Oh, that was amazing. That's incredible.
It's called the God Project.
Yes.
And
We
you
think
can
of
get
that.
tickets now if you're listening, 1812productions.org for tickets, and you must get at least 2 because theater is more fun with a +1. Jen and Sean, thank you so much for taking time before your rehearsal today to unpack.
Thanks, Darna.
this box of very confusing
mysterious items,
mysterious packages that we will figure out at some point and then post all over Instagram about.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for chatting. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Darnell.
Rep Radio continues to be inspired by our community and listeners like you. You can support our work through our fiscal sponsor, Fractured Atlas, and through our Patreon page. Visit repradio.org/donate for more. Stay tuned. You know the rest.